And we are back on Take Action News. News you can use, news that can change the world if you let it and if you help it. Our next guest is Jessica Pieklo. Jessica writes for RH Reality Check, and she is going to talk to us about the latest and sort of tricky developments in the contraception battle and the larger war on women. Jessica, are you with us?
I sure am. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. So the latest development now is that a religious group has gone to the Supreme Court to ask for a stay. Can you tell us just briefly what that story is?
Sure. So January 1st, much of the Affordable Care Act went into effect. Along that is the employer birth control benefit portion of it. And there's already been a lot of activity around this with for-profit corporations suing to try and opt out of it. Certain other groups have also sued, and among them are religious nonprofits. So the law does not require houses of worship or churches, for example, to provide contraception at no additional cost to their employees. And the Obama administration offered a broader, bigger exemption that said if you are a religious nonprofit, you can certify that, and we will allow you to opt out of providing that contraception directly, and instead provide a third-party avenue to make that contraception available to your employees. Well, religious nonprofits were not happy even with that accommodation and have sued, and there's a variety of cases working their way through the appellate courts. On New Year's Eve, right before the law was about to take effect, one of those groups, a group of nuns who operate assisted living facilities and a couple other types of organizations, filed an emergency petition with the Supreme Court asking them to put the requirement on hold. Justice Sotomayor granted that request on New Year's Eve and gave the Obama administration until today to respond. The Obama administration has, and right now we're waiting to see what, if any, Supreme action the Supreme Court will take beyond the very narrow, limited stay for the nuns that they issued on New Year's Eve.
Okay, this is one of the reasons why it's really looking forward to having you straighten us out on this issue, Jessica, is that at first glance, the stories appeared as if were written as if the nuns were only objecting to the paperwork they had to file. In other words, they were objecting to their own ability to opt out of this requirement. But as one digs deeper, it sounds like what they're really trying to do, but correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like what they're really trying to do is close off the ability for their employees to obtain contraception coverage from other sources. Is that the net effect of what's...
Oh, correct. I think that that's a pretty fair assessment here. So the nuns group and group of plaintiffs have, as you said, challenged this self-certification process. And they have said that the process of self-certifying violates their religious liberties because it forces them to participate in a system that they disagree with fundamentally, and that system is even making access to contraception available to their employees. So it's not so much about their individual right to exercise religion as they see fit, i.e. to purchase and use or not purchase and not use contraception in line with whatever faith belief they have, but in reality, affirmatively deny their employees access to a benefit that the law says they are entitled to have.
Right, and so it seems to me that this is, one, it's activism. Two, it means, where does this end? I mean, if you take their argument to a logical extreme, this is a country of diversity of religious beliefs. There are probably 10 active religions in this country with more than 500,000 followers. Does that mean that if I work for a Buddhist organization, they may be able to cut off certain elements of my health plan? Do I need to investigate the religious beliefs of my future employer before joining to know what will and won't be covered? And where does one get the constitutional principle. I thought it worked the way Will Rogers said that your freedom to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. And where does one's constitutional right begin to impinge on another's?
Well, and these are all very important questions to be asking. I mean, the Supreme Court has answered some of these in earlier decisions. For example, we have a broad ministerial exception that says if you are a minister or a place of worship, you do not have to abide by certain anti-discrimination laws if it genuinely impinges on your faith. And that is a very narrow ruling, and it makes sense when we think of the concept in terms of our historical approach to the separation of church and state. But what we're seeing take place with the birth control benefit is conservatives see a wedge, and they see an opportunity to expand this First Amendment protection and blow it out beyond all recognition, and raises all of these very important questions that you raised. Which is, where is the limit to this? It is one thing to say, if you are a minister in a house of faith, you do not have to provide this benefit to your employees because it impinges on your religious faith. The Obama administration already routinely acknowledged that and bent over backwards to make sure that the law did as well. What we're seeing now are these, religious nonprofits that operate universities, that operate hospitals, that operate assisted living facilities, that employ thousands of people of all denominations. And, in the case of Hobby Lobby, we're seeing for-profit secular companies that are trying to take on, for purposes of avoiding a federal tax penalty, providing employment benefits. So I think that we do have to be very precise about this, because there's a lot of cynicism driving this activism from the right, and we are in danger of the federal courts falling for it.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I guess I would ask you, because we're Take Action News, what can a person do about this? If I'm outraged, which, by the way, I am, at this impingement, I mean, I don't support what the NSA is doing. I'd love to be able to be exempted from my obligation to pay taxes to fund it. But I'm told that's not how the system works. So I'm outraged at this. What can a person do if they want to push back? Clearly, the court system is not the electoral system. We're not dealing with elected officials. Are there organizations people can support? Are there letters people can write? What can people do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I think if, as an individual, we can put pressure on our employees or on our employers to make sure that they are complying with the mandate in this particular case. If I was an employee that worked at a place like Hobby Lobby, for example, or a variety of the other Eden Foods, any of these other organizations that have put forward legal challenges, I would want an explanation for that, and I would want clear disclosure of that. I don't know that corporations have always been totally clear with their employees on their position and what's going on. So I think that's a very fundamental grassroots individual step that can take. And then you bring up a very good point, which is, to what degree is there accountability within our federal court system? Petitioning a federal district court judge isn't going to get us very far in terms of having the law applied and interpreted in the way that serves its intended purpose, in this case, providing as much coverage as possible. But I do think continuing to put the pressure on elected officials to let them know that the issue is not about religious liberty. This is about equality in employment benefits. We are talking about non-discrimination in the delivery of insurance coverage, and conservatives are using that as cover and bring up those very important points. And I think that many lawmakers get that there's just a fear or a reluctance to, particularly in the current climate, look like they are not on the side of religious freedom. And I think that it is entirely possible to be on the side of religious freedom and employment equality.
Well, and a last question about religious freedom, I guess, and it's a leading question. We're told this is not about a war on women, this is about religious freedom. Have any of these, Catholic and other groups are also against, or I should say very conservative Catholic groups, and others are also against sex that is not for the purposes of reproduction. Viagra is generally prescribed to men who are beyond the age of reproduction. Have any Catholic groups sued not to have to provide Viagra or other services to aging males? Or is this just about women?
No, this is in there, and it's just about female-driven contraception, and it is about, and even within that, the conversations and the lawsuits have been very loaded because many of the organizations are objecting to providing coverage for what they call abortifacients, which is contraception. So there's a whole fight here within
right.
What is contraception.
I apologize. We have to leave it there. We could talk much longer about it. But Jessica, thanks so much for being with us, and thanks for staying on top of this very important story.
Thank you so much for having me on. Talk to you guys anytime.
We'll be right back.